Hello, I'm Nikki Schiller, and we start this hour with some breaking news. European Union leaders have agreed a new financial package of aid to Ukraine. The announcement was made after talks at the European Leaders Summit in Brussels. The deal involves €50 billion of military and financial assistance. Hungary's Prime Minister had previously blocked the package. It's understood there will now be review periods built in. Ukraine has welcomed the deal, calling it an act of solidarity in the war against Russia. Well, let's go live to our correspondent, Sarah Rainsford, who's in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Sarah, the President of the European Council saying it locked in steadfast, long-term and predictable funding for Ukraine. I assume there is a sigh of relief there.
Definitely. We've had immediate statements from all the senior officials here in Ukraine as soon as that news came from Brussels. Of course, people were watching here very closely, trying to keep a brave face on things, actually, trying to be confident that this deal would be done, or if not, Ukraine would somehow muddle on. But certainly, I think a lot of relief. We've heard from the Prime Minister, Denis Shmyhal, who's talked about this as an expression of solidarity by Europe and called it vital help to withstand the Russian war. He has said that every vote is a significant contribution to a joint victory. And I think that's a point that all politicians here have been underlining, even as those very difficult negotiations were taking place in Brussels, stressing the point that this is not about European aid to Ukraine as Kyiv sees it. They call it an investment by Europe in its own security, in its own future. But certainly, you know, there was a lot at stake here for Ukraine. This is €50 billion of funding, which is being locked in for 4 years and giving Ukraine some kind of stability and ability to plan going forward in what is becoming a protracted war. Because, of course, it's not just about the missiles and the ammunition supplies and the sanctions. All of that, of course, Ukraine keeps saying is absolutely vital. But it's about the money just to keep the budget afloat, just to keep paying the pensions, paying the wages, and to keeping the heat on here in Ukraine as well.
Yes, so this money does actually affect everyday people, not just the troops on the front line.
Yeah, it's about the normal business of governance, you know, at a time when nothing in Ukraine is normal at all. It is about funding the business of running a country, you know, at a time when huge amounts of money are being sent to the fight on the front line. There is, of course, a whole country behind that front line which still has to go on, you know, where pensions still have to be paid, where people still have to go to work, and where money has to be found to keep the economy afloat. So it's all about that. And of course, particularly important as the United States is still blocking another massive block of aid, of support for Ukraine, financial aid for this country, which Ukraine is worried it may not get. You know, that is being caught up in domestic American politics, and the EU funding was also caught up in disputes within the EU bloc, as Hungary, of course, was impeding the passage of that aid. So that has now happened. Ukraine is very, very relieved.
And of course, all the time that the discussions have been going on in Europe and the US, the fighting continuing on the ground.
Of course, and that's what it's all about, you know, and I think that's why the messages coming from Kyiv have been so firm on saying that this is about a joint effort, you know, saying Ukraine is not fighting just for itself, just for its own survival. Of course, it is doing that, but also fighting for a much bigger much bigger cause for European security and stability. And because, as it keeps making the point, Russia is trying to change the world order by force. So Ukraine is saying again, you know, when fighting for this money essentially from Europe, that this is an investment in a much bigger cause, not just about Ukraine, it's about European stability and security too.
Sarah Rainsford in Kyiv, thank you very much for joining us.